billion. So that stock you see closing up 1.9%. Now send things over to Nicole again in the U.S.
Thanks, Sage. There's still much more to come. We'll continue our jobs discussion with Gary Burnison, the CEO of Korn, Ferry International. More on how he sees the job market evolving and his take on Friday's big jobs report. Coming up next, you're watching Worldwide Exchange on CNBC, first in business worldwide. Welcome back to Worldwide Exchange. It is 5:21 on the east coast of the United States. We're looking at a live picture of Times Square, and some of that bright light momentum is trickling on over to U.S. equity markets. If we were likely to open now, we would open higher across the board. We've actually inched higher in the last hour and a half or so. This is after we had a stellar day in stocks yesterday. Gold, though, new record highs. We're, of course, seeing the financials coming back. Financials were up about 2% yesterday. Tech rally, IBM, for example, is at a 52-week high. Dow futures are up 30 above fair value. NASDAQ futures are basically flat but slightly higher. S&P 500 futures are up about 3. And U.S. investors will closely be watching another key report on the jobs market today. The September ADP employment survey, which tracks private sector jobs, is out at 8:15 in the morning. Forecasts call for an increase of 20,000 such jobs last month after a decline of 10,000 in August. Gary Burnison, the CEO of Korn, Ferry International, is still with us to get a pulse check on the ADP report. What are you expecting to see today?
I think it's going to be slow. I think that's the reality. You know, look, I mean, you need 100,000 new jobs just to break even, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you need 3% economic growth to really bring down the unemployment rate in the United States. And so I think you're in for a Nike swoosh. I mean, I think this thing is it's a long haul. For sure. And
when do we get to the end of the swoosh? Is it the end of this year, or is it the first quarter of next year? I mean, look into your crystal Nike ball. I don't even know.
Well, you know, I think it is a few quarters away. I really do. It's a tough time. You know, America's at a crossroads. You know, look, for every $3 we get in, we spend $4. Right? We're racking up $100 billion loss every month. $1 trillion a year. The UK has similar issues, you know, and they've started with their austerity program. And so, you know, the question here is what comes first, you know, the chicken or the egg? Are jobs going to come first? But I think the reality is that we're in for a long, gradual climb out of this.
And speaking of the UK, Anna wants to jump in.
Yeah, I won't ask you about the UK, although we do have our own problems here, as you say. Paul Krugman, an economist who's not always the most optimistic, he says he's not sure whether we're ever going to see full employment in the United States again, whether we'll ever return to those kind of days. What do you think of such a statement?
Well, I think that's you know, that's certainly one end of the extreme. Clearly, I think that Western economies are at a crossroads, and we've all enjoyed this conspicuous consumption as Western nations, and we've overspent for 3 decades. We are at a crossroads, and we have to work our way out of that. And jobs are becoming global, and they're moving. And that's what's striking to me when I've met with global CEOs over the last 4 or 5 months, including in the UK and throughout Europe. And those that truly have global businesses are investing, they're hiring. Nestle, as an example, is sending a supermarket on a barge down the Amazon to sell product to villages. You'd never know that we were at the tail end of this great recession. But those CEOs that are more dependent upon local Western economies, it's much tougher.
Hey Gary, this is Christine. I mean, you deal a lot with CEOs. How has the role of a CEO in the global economy changed in the last few years? What has the financial crisis impacted the role of a CEO?
Well, it's had an enormous impact. I mean, it's you can talk a lot about what it's like to be a CEO, but unless you're a CEO, you really don't know. I mean, it's like society in general. Today there is much instant gratification, and the reality is there is so much pressure in terms of short-term results that, you know, can you really look out over the horizon? But that is exactly what you must do. And as you work your way up the corporate pyramid, what you find when you get to the top is there's another pyramid that inverses itself on top of you, and that's filled with all sorts of distractions. So as a CEO, you have to focus on 2 things, and that's your customers and your employees. Clearly, the average tenure of a CEO has declined dramatically. I mean, in the United States now, it's about 5 years, and that same pattern holds true throughout the world.
But you also say that there is some method to some of that uncertainty in terms of direction. It moves from west to east, and what? North to south?
Sure, and south to south. I mean, the emerging markets have emerged, right? You could say that the Western economies are not developed. Maybe they're overdeveloped, right? But it's fascinating when you meet global leaders, and people are trying to tap this, the 6 billion people that live in the world today, and they're not all in the United States.
But we still do have some of the same uncertainties that I'm sure the CEOs that you talk to in those markets are still looking at the midterm elections, are still looking at the FOMC meeting that's coming up next month as well.
Yeah, and that doesn't help. I mean, the uncertainty is, look, in the United States, you don't even know when to die, right? I mean, you're not going to pay tax this year if you die. I mean, that does need to, people can deal with certainty. But uncertainty when it comes to tax rates, when it comes to re-regulating, becomes very difficult to deal with.
Yeah. Gary stays around for the entire hour. We'll try to mull through some of those issues some more. CEO of Korn Ferry International. Gary, I don't know if you saw this, but we were talking about some of those tense times in Washington over the next month or so. Midterm elections less than a month away. Well, look, the White House, Congress, Democrats, Republicans, they're all butting heads over jobs, the economy, and taxes, as we were just talking about. But amid all of that pressure, there's still a little room for some comic relief. Look at President Obama, who was speaking at the Fortune Most Powerful Women's Conference.
We cannot sustain... Whoops. Was that my... Oh, goodness. That's all right. All of you know who I am. But I'm sure there's somebody back there that's really nervous right now. Don't you think? They're sweating bullets back there right now.
You all need a good laugh every once in a while. No need to sweat your bullets over strategy, though. We got that covered for you coming up. After yesterday's stellar performance on Wall Street, how is today's trading session going to be like ahead of the ADP report? We'll discuss that at the break. You're watching Worldwide Exchange on CNBC, first in business worldwide. To Worldwide Exchange, the headlines making news today out of the United States. The jobs watch is on as investors get a key report today on the private sector, which could give us some insight into Friday's big jobs report.
In Europe, currency wars in focus as China meets with European leaders, and the head of the IMF warns against using Forex as a weapon.
Japanese markets lead today's Asian rally, touching a 2-month high as the BOJ's monetary stimulus brings risk back.
Great to have you with us here on Worldwide Exchange. I'm Nicole Lappin in the United States, along with Anna Edwards in London and Christine Tan in Singapore. It is great to see you on this Wednesday. We're getting through the week together. It is 5:30 in the morning on Wall Street. Welcome to the start of your global trading day. We have been higher with futures all morning long, feeling some of that momentum from our friends in London and in Singapore as well. Dow futures are higher this early morning hour, about 30 above fair value. NASDAQ futures are also up slightly, about 2. We've been inching slightly higher. S&P 500 futures are up about 3. This is after we had some good ISM numbers. Of course, we are looking ahead to that ADP report, and that does come out this morning. Are you still faring better?
Yeah, not bad. Let's have a look at how European equity markets are doing. We're actually making some further gains over the last hour. We're up by more than 1% on the Xetra DAX and the CAC Caron. We've had some okay earnings. We've had a few corporates reporting. We've had a decent performance from the mining stocks, some of the construction stocks, and some of the cyclicals, all jumping on the bandwagon today and moving to the upside. Christine, how are you doing there?
It's a positive session here, and it's 5:30 a.m. China markets are closed until the October 8th and National Day holidays. But as for the rest of the market, strong session here that moved by the BOJ to cut rates and, of course, ease further, helping to instill confidence that maybe other central banks will do the same, pumping liquidity into the markets. Nikkei 225 is up 1.8%, despite the firmness in the Japanese yen. The Kospi up 1.3% on foreign fund inflows for the 16th consecutive session. The Hang Seng up 1%. The Hong Kong dollar pegged to the greenback. The weak greenback, really helping to fuel funds into this particular market. The Aussie market up 1.7%. Resources also getting a boost because that any BOJ or any central bank easing could spur global growth, and that would help the commodity sector, and the Bombay Sensitive up 0.6%. Dollar rates, dollar yen hovering around the 83 level, and this is a key level we're watching now, dipping below that. I see for the first time. So we could be seeing some sort of intervention. A lot of people were saying that key 83 level was going to be the mark, the psychological level. A lot of talk about whether the BOJ move yesterday could actually reduce the risk of dollar yen falling below that. Apparently it's dipping below that right now. We'll have to see what Japanese authorities will be doing. Euro dollar 1.3853, sterling dollar 1.5892, and euro sterling 0.8715. Nicole.
Using currencies as a policy weapon will seriously threaten the global recovery. That was a stark warning from IMF Chief Dominique Strauss-Kahn speaking to the Financial Times ahead of the IMF World Bank Summit in Washington, D.C. He warned that long-term negative impact of currency manipulation would outweigh any short-term benefits. So will it? Let's continue the conversation. Jordan Kimmel, Managing Director of Boyer Asset Management, joins us live bright and early this morning. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Gary Burnison, CEO of Korn Ferry, is still with us as well. So Jordan, let me start with you. In this race to debase, is the dollar going to win out? There is a camp that says this is a very crowded trade and there's going to be some selling pressure.
Well, you can't get too emotional about the dollar and the currency when you're trying to invest. The average individual, I think it's a little bit beyond them. I think the key here is we're getting some confidence back that the global economy is not falling off a cliff. I think that people talk about don't fight the Fed. Well, don't fight a globally coordinated Fed. And I think that the key is some leading indicators are already telling us that the rest of the world is growing. America's coming out of a recession. And you look at the market and the opportunities, and clearly equities are the choice right here. And I think that we're starting to build some confidence back in the market right now.